I think we will begin and more people will join us as we go along. So welcome everybody and welcome Eugene, the new leader of the CBSO. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Great to be here with you, everyone.
So Eugene, for the benefit of everybody listening on whom there will be a test later, please tell us how we should say your name correctly.
Eugene Tzikindelean.
Very good, thank you. That way people don't have to ask me, they've heard it directly from you. Fantastic. And tell us where you are at the moment and how you've been spending lockdown.
So I am in Copenhagen, at home in Copenhagen, Denmark. We've been also on lockdown since March 13, just after I played my first Elgar violin concerto. So I finished the first period before lockdown of work on a very, very, very lovely note. Yeah. It's very sentimental now that was the last piece I performed.
Really?
Before anything, very sentimental. It's a piece that I treasure so much. And lockdown was initially, like for everyone else, we didn't really know what was happening. It was supposed to be 1 week, then 2 weeks, then a month, then it ended up being 3 months.
Gosh.
And,
And for all the orchestras, presumably it was only Sweden where everybody carried on playing. Was it in Denmark? Everything stopped for a while.
Absolutely. So Sweden kept working. Of course, later on they implemented rules of distance and masks and everything, but they kept open. I won't comment on that, of course. Time will tell. Time will tell how good of an idea that was. But during lockdown, I visited Sweden also in a complete isolation because I like to go in the woods.
Oh, right.
And just to be in a car and in a cottage, I had no contact with anyone. So in that respect, I was a little bit happy that they didn't close because I love to find myself in those woods and lakes and beautiful atmosphere. So that's part of my lockdown. I've been meditating in the Swedish woods.
and you were able to drive over that amazing bridge from Copenhagen.
Absolutely.
Looking out for the dead bodies. Yeah, very careful. Now, hopefully you can all hear us okay. I think if you make sure you are watching in gallery mode, you should be able to see both of us together. And if you have any, you're all on mute at the moment, but if you have any questions, you should be able to raise your hand electronically. Don't raise it physically because we can't see you, but you should be able to raise your hand electronically. And we've had some questions in advance, but we'd be very happy to take more questions later on in the conversation. And you should see the Q&A button, which allows you to press that and type a question in there. If you have any questions about just how to make the webinar work, or if there are any technical issues, perhaps use the chat button for that. But questions for Eugene, please use the Q&A button. Now, Eugene, you've been leader of, and the reason you're in Denmark is you are leader of the Odense Symphony in Denmark. How long have you been there, and how did that come about that you were in Denmark? Because you are not Danish.
No, I'm not. I'm not Danish. And before my time in Denmark, I lived in France for roughly 12 years, because I left my homeland, Romania, in my late teens to pursue education in Paris.
Yeah.
And then Paris and France became my second home. And my first job I won in the Orchestra Nationale du Capitole de Toulouse. And just out of pure ambition and curiosity, which I'm really proud of, it's something that maybe defines me a little bit, and my fascination for Scandinavia. I started putting my CV in applications, and word spread. And then one day I had an email from the Odense Symphony that they had a concert, opening concert of their 12-13 season with Alexander Vedernikov, which you know, very well, conducting Heldenleben, and they needed a leader, and I was free. So after that performance, they asked me officially if I would be interested and to stay. And of course, I said yes because I found a lot of things that I was looking for in this position, and I was curious about a completely new and different mentality, society, landscape, everything. And I've been happy ever since. But of course, again, my curiosity and my ambition pushed push me push me forward, push me forward. With that connection, I think that's how the CBSO came about.
That's,
Through Alex.
that's right. So Alex Vodenikov, we were discussing with him, as we did with all our guest conductors, who were the concertmasters leaders around the world that they knew, because we had the vacancy here, and it was he who gave us your number and said, you know, obviously I don't want to lose him because he's fantastic, but you should definitely invite Eugene over because he's amazing. So yeah, we have Maestro Vodenikov to thank for introducing us to you. Whether he would thank me now is another question, but he's a lovely man. I'm sure he has forgiven us. Now, growing up in Romania, presumably, so this was the sort of last days of Ceausescu and of the communist system, where presumably music education was an incredibly strong part, as with all the communist countries, was an incredibly strong part of the society there.
Absolutely, absolutely omnipresent. Absolutely, the education of completely encompassing universal education was a must, and music and theater and arts had their very strong presence in the society, and that's why we went to music schools.
Okay, and were your parents were musicians or not?
Yes, my parents taught violin and piano. My father is a violin professor, and my mom a piano professor, in the school where I've learned growing up since I was 6. And they were my first mentors. My mom was my first accompanist, and my father was my first, although never officially, but he was my teacher and my guidance through my early years.
Fantastic. So just to be clear, for us all to be even more jealous and ashamed, therefore your mother tongue is Romanian. You presumably learned a little bit of Russian as well, or not so much?
It was too. My generation did not have compulsory Russian in school. We've studied French and English.
Yeah,
and
Danish.
And now I speak Danish and Italian and Spanish, because they all Latin languages are slightly connected. So you pick one, you can make connections. As I make connections now, I can find my way in Swedish and Norwegian because of Danish, because they're interconnected.
It's close enough. Well, that's just made us all feel thoroughly ashamed, even before we hear you play the violin. So very impressive. Now tell us a little bit about the life of the orchestra in Odense. So this is Carl Nielsen's hometown, isn't it? So I'm guessing, you know, that Scandinavian music has been an important part of the life there, but you also talked about playing Elgar, and I know there was a little English focus. What is the repertoire of the orchestra there in Odense?
We are one of the 5. They are called land orchestras, because in all the regions of Denmark there is an orchestra that sustains the musical life of that particular region, and Odense is the only one on this island called Fyn. In old Roman was Fionia. Fionia. That's Fyn, and we are trying to cover all areas. Modern music, folk pop a little bit sometimes, but the symphonic repertoire is absolutely universal. Of course, we have to defend Carl Nielsen's name. Therefore, Therefore, we should be specialists of Carl Nielsen's music. Although I don't believe in any in this term of a specialist. There's always fresh ideas that can be found elsewhere, and yeah. But we've tried to, during these years, especially with Maestro Vedenikov, we've tried to encompass all repertoires and genres of classical music, and including a ring cycle. 2 years ago, a double ring cycle with fantastic singers, and those are our big pride. And it was Alexander's great ambitious project and wish and dream to do it in Odense, and he brought singers from Bayreuth, from Bayerische Staatsoper, and it was a phenomenal time. And musically speaking, for me, something that I will never forget, and that put my whole vision about orchestra playing and playing together and in a completely new higher level, because it's incredible.
Fantastic. So you play. So the orchestra plays for the opera house as well as symphonic concerts.
Yes.
Does everything.
Does most things, educational programs, church concerts, summer concerts, outdoor concerts. So everything we can present ourselves. Yeah.
So the idea of the orchestra being a sort of a resource for the whole community, which, as you know, we are celebrating 100 years of that in Birmingham. It's absolutely what our orchestra has already done. That's exactly the culture you come from, which is very different from perhaps, some orchestral cultures where the sort of orchestra is up here and the high art only, and
Yeah.
not really connected to its town. It feels like you've been very proud to be at the center of Odense's musical life, cultural life.
Yeah, and I have been very proud, because I believe that arts have to have an important and absolutely incredible role of education and entertainment, of course, of all levels in a society. We have to provide R&B music sometimes, and we have to give them a ring cycle, and we have to give them an opera gala in the King's Gardens, and we have public, also the chamber music series, and we have public that is loyal to everything. It doesn't matter, or we have public that is interested only in one, but we have to gather them all around and not lose them, because generations change, and technology has taken a lot of the public's interest to come in a concert hall, to go to the theater, to go to a conference, because everything is online now. So the struggle is much bigger these days to get them all to be loyal to this form of art that is, in my eyes, absolutely, we can't live without it. It's yeah, that's my take on it.
That's fantastic. So I think that is so much the philosophy in Birmingham as well. I think that's one of the many reasons why I think you're a great fit for our orchestra. But one day, therefore, I promise you that we will manage one day to program in your honor one of my absolutely favorite pieces by Nielsen, which I only ever managed to program once and not in Birmingham, which is, and I'm going to get this wrong, but Funsk 4, the springtime in Funen. We have an amazing children's choir in Birmingham, as you know, and this, I don't know how many of you will know this piece. It's really very rarely played outside Denmark, but it's the most glorious kind of celebration of a kind of community life with chorus and children's choir and soloists and orchestra. It's a lovely piece.
It is delicious, absolutely.
So my promise, at some point we will find an opportunity to program this piece in Birmingham. Now, you very kindly agreed to play a couple of pieces for us. So we'd love to hear the first of those now. Tell us what you're going to play. You're going to play some Bach.
I will play some Bach, and of course the main reason is that not only during lockdown, but during every period of reflection and meditation, musicians tend to go back to Bach because is Bach creates some kind of meditation inside and outside the instrument. It puts you in a mode of reflection, and it's so pure, and it's a great way to go back to basics. Not that it's basic music, but it's you have to be extremely pure in order to access this music and transmit it also forward. So I have been spending a lot of time with Bach in the lockdown, because in the times where we don't know what is happening, we can either wait for things to happen or start working on things that we would like to improve. So it was a big part of my lockdown to try to look deeper, because Bach is something that we live with from the age of, let's say, 8 until the end of the career. It never grows old. We can never abandon Bach. We always go back to it because it's a thread that just keeps evolving as we evolve as human beings. So I'm gonna play a short piece from the third partita called Lourd, which is a slow French dance that was rather popular at that time. So yeah.
Fantastic. Well, over.
So.
Fantastic. Thank you. I can hear everyone clapping, even though I can't hear them. Fantastic. Thank you so much. That was wonderful, wonderful. Bach. Now we have a question which I was already going to ask you from Chris Guy on the Q&A. So Tell us about that amazing violin that you play.
Oh, yes. Um, it's an instrument made in Venice in 1735 by Domenico Montagnana, which will ring a bell mostly for cellists, because I think the majority of the top world cello soloists are owners, at least, or players of Montagnana's, because he built incredible cellos, and this is a violin that I am very grateful to play, courtesy of a art foundation here in Denmark.
Fantastic. And what do you think is, what's particular about its qualities or Montagnana's instruments? What is it that makes it different from a violin that somebody could go and make today in China or in Germany or in America?
Yeah, well, I think first of all, for the builder Domenico Montagnana, I think he had a very strong sense of color, and he realized at that very early stage. I mean, we're talking this 18th century, beginning of the 18th century. He realized how important colors were, and the palette and the dynamic range of an instrument, whether it's a cello or a violin. He didn't build violas. So that's one thing. He had a strong sense of color, and these instruments are renowned for being very colorful, with very velvety and deep basses, and very silvery and shiny top register. Why it would not be so easy to recreate such a sound today is that this violin has been, well, first of all, it's incredibly lucky that it survived almost 300 years without a crack, without any major accident. There's no repairs. It's in mint perfect condition, and that's already a miracle in itself. How many wars? How many? I mean, it's incredible to think what it's been through, but it's been very nicely kept, and it still holds so much original varnish. You can see Montagnana's brush still, because he left a very thick layer of varnish. He knew that this was just like Bach. He knew he was writing for eternity, or for a long period of time. But it's been sitting in this very right tension, and the wood is cured, and there's almost a process of embalming that took place during 300 years, that the wood is so well preserved, and I think it's very hard to recreate that process these days. We will have to wait and see. The next generation will tell us how the violins that are built even beginning of the 1900s will survive the test of time.
Absolutely. Well, we're very lucky to have it, and it's wonderful that you have such an instrument available to you to play. Now, it's already been heard several times in Symphony Hall, because you've been, in your trial to become leader. Actually, there have been a number of concerts that had really quite big solos for you. I'm thinking of Mahler 8 in January, but also the Missa Solemnis, the Weinberg, which was the first project you did. How does it feel playing an instrument like this in Symphony Hall?
Oh, well, it feels wonderful because I feel my whole idea about performing in a fantastic acoustic is that we have an instrument that we play, literally, physically. We play our own instrument, but this instrument needs an extra instrument to be able to shine. Like I need my voice here to be able to express what I need to express musically, and to touch the audience and my colleagues through what I do. The whole is that extra instrument that allows us to pass on the emotions and the musical message that we're trying to pass on. So I don't believe we get the same result playing a lovely voice like this one in a regular hall or in a great hall. It's not the same. effect, because these instruments, these old instruments, they shine so much. The better the acoustic, the more the range and the possibilities, and you can go down to the most to the thinnest pianissimo, and everybody will hear it, and it carries over the orchestra, and the whole supports the sound, which is it's this incredible physics, which I'm very bad at, but I just react on what I feel, and also the wholes, a great whole. There's always this concept, what the whole gives back to you, what you receive from the whole, and there is at a very high level, almost spiritual level, there's a connection of reciprocity. I give this and I get this back, and then everything is even, and that's where we reach that perfect harmony. That people after a great concert talk about, and they go home and we go home and what a great concert this was. It's reaching that perfect unity.
Absolutely right, and that very much echoes what I often say to soloists as well as to leaders when they come to play with us in Symphony Hall for the first time, is you never need to force. And that was really striking in the solos you've done for us, is that you can play with whatever dynamic you think is appropriate to the music, but the sound of a really good instrument with a really wonderful player will carry out into the hall. You never sort of, no sound is too sort of gentle and intimate for people. Yeah. Now, obviously, the job question here from Nick Hay, and also on the Q&A from Colin Archer. I mean, the job of the leader, of being a permanent leader, as distinct from a guest who comes and goes, permanent leader in an orchestra, is much more than playing great solos. The solos are really important, but there is so much more to it than that. How do you see the main aspects of the job of leader?
I must say I love it. The job of leader, it's something that, of course, goes beyond playing great solos, and playing good violin, and preparing your part, and preparing the music as a conductor, which I love to do. It's my passion on the side, conducting. So I always like to prepare as I was conducting the piece, because I need to be aware of all these elements. Like Mirga or whoever sits on the podium, they have to. I see that the leader's job somehow as a, I don't know the right word. It's almost like a father figure to the string section, and a point of reference, and the leader in my eyes is somebody that can be asked a number of questions about a certain passage, about a certain piece. I think I have to be very, very in contact with first of all my string section, but also the wind section, and I know they take my role. I saw it during my visits to Birmingham. They take my role very seriously, and we are very much connected as a central point of reference. Whereas I take care of the most technical aspects. So then, when Mirga comes, everything is laid out for her to make music. That's one way to look at it. But of course, I have to organize bowings. Of course, I have to keep everybody connected, excited, happy, even sometimes through body language during a concert. I have to galvanize my orchestra in order to present this to the conductor, that they can really take it a step up and do what they need to do.
And just following up on that point with another question from Gina Butler, how can the work of the leader can influence the sound of the orchestra, can't they, as well, and the way in which the orchestra works? This is what I've experienced here, and what musicians always say to me is that often what the leader is doing is actually even more important than what the conductor is doing, because the question of when to play and how to play is incredibly important. Difficult for us to see from the auditorium, but your role in that is often very visual, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And let's say we have everybody looking up to me when I'm leading. They can understand from from the way I play and the where I play and my body language, they can understand a number of things that is necessary and they can use for. In many times we conductors are not necessarily string players. It's not a necessity to be a string player, but that's where I can step in. And if Mirga says, I want you to play it like it's a bright red color, then I have to be able to provide her with a bright red color of the violins or for the string section. And it's always, I feel, is lead by example. If this is how you want it to sound, then make everybody understand how to do it and show them the way of how to reach this certain color, this certain dynamic, this certain intensity, and always make yourself visible for people to take that information just by looking up. Okay, he's playing there. Okay, he's playing short. Okay, he uses a lot of vibrato and not a lot of pressure. Okay, so this is how they. Sometimes we don't speak much in the CBSO, because of course very luckily everybody's so aware and so curious about how I'm doing it, and then off we go.
Now you've done a few concerts, I think, just since Denmark kind of began to unlock, and like orchestras everywhere in Europe who are just beginning to rehearse again, not yet, alas, in the UK, but people are sitting further apart. So yeah, that must make the role of the leader even more important in terms of ensemble and getting everyone to play together. How has that been for you?
It has been quite challenging, because everything changes on the perception of your own sound and the sound of the group. Of course, if you spread the people, this is something. We are playing the way we play normally for a reason, and it's been going on for hundreds of years. And this is the way we have to be connected. The section has to be close together and with the other section. So if you separate the people apart, then their sound becomes more isolated, and they hear themselves more than they should hear, because it's all a matter of melting in each other's sound, and the people in front and the people in the back. This is all a symbiosis, and now it's all broken by this distance, which asks for, not only from me, of course I need to be even clearer, but it asks for much more awareness from musicians, which actually is not a bad thing to try as an exercise, but now we were forced into it.
Yes.
By this terrible pandemic. But as an exercise, it's very interesting to try to not rely on your partner and be your own desk, but as an exercise, just for fun. But now we're forced into this separation, this distancing, and it creates and it asks for much more awareness, and people ask themselves the questions more, I think. In my orchestra, is this the way I sound? Do I like the way I sound? Are we together? Excuse me, are we together? Yes, we're very much together. It's just very strange to play like that.
So actually, we're all trying to find what the positives will be at the end of this terrible period we've been in. But maybe orchestral musicians will all have greater awareness of the whole ensemble than was needed before as a result.
Absolutely.
Another question from Chris Lochran. From what you've seen and heard so far in Birmingham, where are the things where we can still improve? I mean, I think after 100 years, CBSO has this kind of constant drive to get better and greater and improve. So what are the things you think from your experience so far that the CBSO can improve, perhaps in the concert hall, but also outside and in society?
Wow, difficult question, because to improve is a very, very big word and very large concept in improving. I look at the orchestra, and first of all, the orchestra is an organism, and the orchestra's position in society as the universe. Everything is in motion forever. It's a perpetual metamorphosis. And I wouldn't call it so much improve, but there's always a fresh pair of ears and eyes can always bring up something that has been neglected or forgotten or people haven't thought about, and that's where I feel that I would like to do a lot of work in strengthening, of course, the string section, and get the unity of the sound that I dream about, which we've reached many times during concerts together, because I remember Sir Simon Rattle saying that the CBSO is an orchestra just like a perfect champagne, sparkling wine. It's I don't need to explain what that means. And some orchestras have the string section of, for example, of the Berlin Philharmonic. Is of course the deepest, most powerful red wine.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, of course, with Sir Simon, but my ambition is to have all the wines and spirits in stock, and use them accordingly, because we need to provide. I don't want to compare it to composers, because I will get attacked that it's a. Because always, if you think of a string place of Mahler 9, for example, of course you imagine that deep, bold, red Californian screaming eagle, for example. But maybe it can be a lovely Bourgogne, and we have to be able to go and search for all those colors at any given time, and it has to be. It's my ambition to have this as a strength, that we provide the whole palette of colors, and I don't want to be labeled as just one. I would like us, depending to conductor and repertory, to have all the array of possibilities at hand.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree with that, and I've always felt that for the orchestra to have a purpose of why we keep doing concerts, it has to be that the next time we play Beethoven's Fifth will be completely different from the last time, and the one after will be different again, and that's why we invite different conductors and so on. If it is always the same, some orchestras believe, we have our sound, it should always be like this. If you're going to play it exactly the same way every time, why would people bother coming to concerts? They can just stay at home with their favorite CD, and that's that. The whole point is it should be different each time. We've done those amazing Mahler 8s with Mirga, but the next time we play Mahler 8, it should be completely different. And as you say, your role as leader of the orchestra is to turn that translation into how it happens in the music, to be able to take what the conductor is asking for, and what with your ideas as well, and translate that into sometimes very practical things: more bow, less bow, down bow, up bow. These.
Yeah, it's my one of the violinists that I admire the most, and this since I was a child, Ivry Gitlis. He always told me when we used to talk together, he said, just remember that if there's only one way to interpret a musical piece, that speaks of how poor that music is. And obviously we're not talking about poor music. We're playing the most amazing music, so the possibilities are endless.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of amazing music, we already have something on the Q&A, which is, I think, less of a question and more of a demand, which is from Elizabeth Wellings, who says, I would like to hear you play the Elgar Concerto in Birmingham. Can that be arranged? So we should have a talk about that after this session. That would be amazing to have.
That would mean for me, well, first of all, to play the Elgar in England. It is one of the greatest honors a violinist can have, and I had that honor to play Shostakovich in the Great Hall of Moscow Conservatory years ago, and there's always something magic happening, because this is where this music comes from, and I mean Elgar was born not far from Birmingham.
That's right. So, on your next visit, we will take you to his birthplace, just outside Malvern, and the countryside and the hills around there are absolutely amazing. It explains everything in the music, especially in the violin concerto, if you drive around the Malvern Hills. So that is what we will do on your next time here. Now you've prepared another piece for us, alas not Elgar, but the composer that is both friend and adversary for violinists for the last 200 years, Paganini.
Yes, and I've been labeled in my young years as a virtuoso against my will, because my mentors and teacher have pushed me to explore the virtuosity of the violin, because they considered that I was pretty good at it, and of course I grew up and I realized there's so much more than pyrotechnics on the violin, but I kept that hobby for it, and every now and then I go back to the caprices, of course, all the 6 I, and this particular caprice is the number 9, which Liszt later on took into the Transcendental Etudes. Why I picked this caprice? Because there's a feeling of perpetual movement. I mean, you can start it and keep going, just like Goldberg variations. It can go on for forever. And I thought yesterday, when I chose to play it today, I thought there's something about this caprice actually that it's very silly. There's no depth, philosophical depth in it. But if you take this perpetuity, and then I was just thinking, maybe it's a good way to say musically, life goes on. We will go through it, we will go over it, we will get back together and we'll play great concerts, and life will go on, because it has to.
Fantastic, that's such a great message for the moment. So, Paganini Caprice number 9, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much.
Bravo, absolutely amazing. I do know. I used to play the violin many, many years ago, and I would take a look at Paganini on the page and not even try to begin. It's just, I cannot conceive of all of that double stopping. Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much. Now, what in terms of your own musical preferences, you've done a playlist for us, the Top Notes playlist, which you can find on the Stay Tuned area of the CBSO website, which I'm sure many of you are visiting at the moment. Tell us about maybe both, to play, but also just to listen to. What is the music that gives you the most pleasure? Is it violin music, or is it, other things altogether?
Oh, very little violin music. Yeah, I listen to a lot of piano music. Maybe because I can still hear my mom practicing piano at home. I love listening to string quartets. I mean, Beethoven string quartets. I've been lucky enough to play the whole cycle a number of times.
Okay.
With my quartet here in Copenhagen. We dismantled because of different reasons, but that was our project, and we played a number of string quartets, and I didn't get tired of it. In the contrary, they're a very, very important part of my musical heart, and generally symphonic music. Just I needed my symphonic music even after a great performance of Mahler 8. I think I still listened to the symphony for about a month after,
Right.
because I think a great piece lives with you and within. Elgar 1, Elgar 2, Walton 1. I listen a lot. The Dream. I listen. Lovely music. I discover much more depth into the music that I did not know before, because for me it came a little late. The love for English music, because I don't think you can taste it and feel it so organically from outside. You need to be playing with an English orchestra. You need to learn the way of producing sound. You need to learn the phrasing. You need to learn also the atmosphere, the whole British countryside, the whole universe of British music. I became to absolutely adore, and it has nothing to do with my appointment. It was a love story that began 10 years ago when I first worked with an English orchestra, and that was the Philharmonia. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Now, just looking ahead, obviously we are in this slightly fluid situation at the moment, as you know. I mean, your position in Birmingham should have begun last month in June. At the moment, the orchestra is not able to give any concerts. We hope that we are desperately trying to get back into Symphony Hall this autumn, and if not Symphony Hall, then in other places we will play. You will eventually be moving to Birmingham to join us. I think you will carry on doing some work in Denmark while they begin their own search for a leader there.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Precisely. That is the plan. But of course, for now, I was lucky to still have a job in Denmark during these times, because it was my only source of income.
Yeah, absolutely. No, it's been, and in this country, the musicians who have a permanent job, an employed job in an orchestra like the CBSO, are in a much better place, safer place than the musicians, for instance, in the London orchestras, who are mostly freelance, where there's been some government help, but nothing like as strong as it has been for those who are employed. So I know it's been a very tricky time for musicians really all over the world at the moment, because what we do is the opposite of social distancing. We bring people together. That's the job. So but anyway, as soon as we can, we will be bringing back. And actually, I think the opportunity, with your experience of chamber music and of directing and so on. I think actually some of the things we talked about when you accepted the job, we talked about working together with strings and slightly smaller ensembles to get to know people and work on the sound and so on. Actually, in fact, will be very important parts of what we do over the next few months. Playing big Mahler symphonies is not going to be yet. That will come back, as you say, but that's not going to be yet. So I think there will be lots of opportunities for you to get to know all the members of the orchestra very well from the start, I think.
No, I'm looking forward for that. And then again, I see it as an opportunity and maybe something that's necessary, especially with appointing a leader. And I need to feel things and to shape things and to get everybody on board. And I think there's a lot we can work with for a greater future in this period before the Mahlers and the Shostakoviches come back.
That's right. Shostakovich 11 was going to be that first week in the job for you with Vodanikov, and oh gosh, how I miss being able to hear the orchestra tear into that music in Symphony Hall. But it will. You're quite right. We must remain optimistic. It will come back. This is very important. Now we have an electronic hand raised from Kath Poulter. So Kath, I'm going to unmute you, and then you can put your question to Eugene. So just bear with me a second. Sorry, you'd think I'd know how to do this by now. Right, allow to talk. There we go. Kath, you should be able to make yourself heard now.
What are the possibilities of doing open air concerts in Centenary Square?
Fairly soon, though I think probably not as soon as the 4th of July, which was originally what looked like being the date. It will be possible to give performances to an audience outdoors, but we are still waiting at the moment for the government to give the rules on how many musicians, so both two things, how far apart musicians need to sit, and secondly, on how many wind and brass players they will allow to gather together at any one point. So there is a lot of debate about the impact of wind and brass playing and also singing on the spread of the virus. There is lots and lots of very good research from around the world on this. I was sent 3 different pieces of international research only yesterday, but at the moment, the approach of the British government and Public Health England is to say, we need to have new research done here in the UK. So that is beginning soon, as I understand it. There's some research projects about to start, but until they are given greater comfort of how far apart people need to sit, we are currently not allowed to work. There was an interesting interview, quite lengthy interview actually, on yesterday evening's Front Row on Radio 4, all about this. I mean, about the arts more generally, theatre as well. My colleague, my counterpart from the Royal Shakespeare Company talked about the impact for them, and there was an extended interview with Simon Rattle about the challenges facing orchestras. So I'm hoping that we will be able to do something outdoors. I don't think it will be in Centenary Square, if I'm honest, because it's still too much of a building site at the hall end. Yeah. But we are looking at whether there might be things possible in parks or in bandstands. And of course, we have just a short window of the 3 or 4 days that constitute the British summer in order to be able to make something like this work. Eugene, in Denmark, you were telling me that the distancing between instruments was actually relatively small compared with what some other countries have talked about.
Yes, we've since 8th of June, it has been decided that it should be 1 meter. And we've been playing with 1 meter, and we've welcomed public into the hall for our last concert, which was on Saturday, which I conducted and not played because, economical reasons. But I conducted the last concert of the orchestra with about 250 people from our core public in the symphony hall.
So the audience are still separated out a little bit.
Yes, unless you are part of the same household. So if you come with wife and children, or there was patches. There were patches of audience, but it was incredible to see how happy they were to be back in the hall and to listen to the orchestra. It really, we could feel it all.
I bet that must be absolutely amazing. We cannot wait to get back to that. I must say, and yeah, we will see what distancing is required. But I dream of being able to get to just 1 meter, because at that point, actually, quite a large orchestra is possible, and most people can be involved.
Absolutely.
Very good. Well, Eugene, thank you so much for your time. It's been absolutely fantastic to both to see you and also to hear from you and to hear you playing your amazing Montagnana. Absolutely fantastic, and it's made us, I'm sure, made us all even more sort of expectant and anticipating having you here in Birmingham. It's been several years the CBSO has been without a leader, so we couldn't be more pleased that those days are over, and we will have you here with us. And you will feel when you are back, you know how the Birmingham audience is, even without hearing everyone's voice today, except for Kath. You know how incredibly warm and generous spirited the Birmingham audience is. And I think that first time that you walk out onto stage in Symphony Hall as the permanent leader of the orchestra and with an audience in the hall, yeah, I just can't imagine how that is going to feel. It's what keeps us going, I think, in this 100th year of the orchestra is the prospect of being back there. So thank you to all of you for coming along today. The next talk will be in 2 weeks' time with another very recent appointment to the orchestra, a job that's been empty for even longer than Eugene's job of leader. So the principal harp in the orchestra, Rob Johnston, you will all remember, was with us for more than 40 years, and he was finally replaced earlier this year by Catherine Thomas, who will join us on the 15th of July for another of these webinars. And we will also prevail on Catherine to play. We have instruments that are allowed to be played on their own, so we will hear also from Catherine. But what we're really looking forward to is having Catherine and Eugene back on stage with another 88 colleagues in Symphony Hall. We may have some steps to go before we get there, but we'll keep you informed as to how those things go. Eugene, thank you so much. When is your next concert? Do you have anything else coming up in Denmark?
No, I am officially on vacation, which I feel is the most undeserved vacation I've ever. I'm ready to go, but I will just go fishing instead.
Exactly. Take it while you can have it. The Danish summer is almost as short as the Birmingham summer, so please enjoy. Thank you so much. Thank you to Eve and the team for organising this today, and thank you to all of you for coming along. And we hope to see some of you back here on the 15th of July with Catherine. So thank you all, and see you soon. Eugene, see you soon. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.